My name is Summa-Chadwick, and I'm so fortunate to have had a lifetime of experience working as a professional musician. I've seen music from many different elements as a performer and a researcher and an educator. But the most amazing thing that I've seen about music is its therapeutic power to transform people with motor, speech, cognition, and pain management issues. I was really privileged to be able to work with children with autism several years ago using neurologic music therapy techniques. And the results were amazing. A young man who had kind of a kinetic stutter to his gait, he learned to walk and then run and then participate in the Special Olympics. Another young man who was nonverbal learned the power of speech through music. And a young lady who didn't have any ability to be able to focus her attention, so she couldn't stay in her great first grade classroom, used attention protocols for several weeks and then mainstreamed back into that classroom and was able to stay there the entire time. So these experiences and so many more convinced me that music could completely revolutionize healthcare if we would only move in that direction. Now, the ancient Greeks knew about the therapeutic power of music to transform, and they used it very effectively in their healthcare and educational systems. And this stayed through until the time of the Romans. We see in the great Roman philosopher Boethius what he wrote in 520, discussing the music of the spheres, musica mundana. That which is the most powerful form of music can only be sensed and felt, but not heard. As the centuries have gone on, music for the aesthetic has really taken over from the music of the therapeutic. But along comes 2020, and we're in the midst of the pandemic, reaching for music to comfort us like we never have before. And I believe that we are now on the cusp of society realizing once again the therapeutic benefits of music as an equal to the aesthetic benefits of music. So how does it work? Neuroplasticity actually occurs in the brain. With the advent of imaging tools from the 1990s, scientists are able to actually look into the brain and see what's happening as the music is interacting with it. And we find that there are new neural patterns growing and current neural patterns getting more strengthened. The rhythm is the key on this. Rhythm has a steady pulse, so it's anticipatory. It is intrinsic. It's going on in our body all the time. We see it in a heart rate. We see it in how fast we're walking in a gait speed. And each person has what's called a functional tempo. This is the beats per minute that the therapeutic music will work the best at for that particular person. It typically equates to the heart rate and is a little slower in adults, a little bit faster in children. So physiological changes occur in the brain with music. The brain oscillations start to work with the music and entrain. The heart is altered by the music. The muscles start to work with the music. This is a process called entrainment. And I'm going to show you a very brief example now of how powerful this could be. If everybody watching this could just find your own personal tempo, tap a finger, tap a toe, and find your own personal tempo. And now what happens with this? Typically, your body just jumped right into that, and it knows exactly what it needs to do. I'm going to show you some video now so that you can see the power of entrainment with a young man who is nonverbal. He is moderately to severely autistic. He only had 2 words in his vocabulary, hi and bye. But his mom found out he loved the song Happy Birthday. And so we're about to add a 3rd word to his vocabulary, the word you, as Happy Birthday is played. see the same young man a year later. He still loved Happy Birthday, and you're going to see tremendous progress that he's made on this. He's trying to actually sing all of the words this time and being successful with about a third of them.
One more time, make it good. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Zachary. Happy birthday.
And now we're able to start working with him with some of the words that he uses every day. He had a device that he communicated with where he'd push a button and the button would say, I want. And then he'd push another button and this is what he would be wanting. So now we'll work with one more technique called melodic intonation therapy, where we're doing a very simple setting of a tune of I want cookie. We're going to warm up on W first and then go into that.
Wah. Good. I want cookie. 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 Excellent, excellent.
Music reaches both hemispheres of the brain, and so therefore we can use it to work with all of these various issues regarding motor, speech, cognition, and pain management. So let's do some other examples. For motor, a gentleman with Parkinson's disease could have the kind of typical Parkinson's shuffle. He's a jazz lover, and so what we want to do is we want to count his beats per minute that he's walking, subtract 10% from that, and then lay down just a jazz bass beat that he can walk to that's a little slower, which is going to elongate his stride and let him take fewer steps. Imagine another speech issue. We saw the power of music with the young man earlier, but what about a toddler learning the alphabet? The toddler says A, C, D, B, but then here's that first line of the ABC song, and suddenly all of these different letters go into A, B, C, D, E, F, G, one chunk that we've gone into. So it's very powerful for learning. Cognition. A woman could be in the hospital at this point from a stroke. She can't focus her attention. We're going to give her two tasks. One is to pick up a pencil. The other is to squeeze a tennis ball she's holding in her hand. And the therapist says, when you hear the Bach prelude, I want you to pick up the pencil, but when you hear the Beethoven, I want you to squeeze the tennis ball, because we know she's a classical music lover. This will motivate her. For pain management, a gentleman could come into the hospital as a burn victim, and he also has Alzheimer's. It's necessary now to change his dressing, and it's going to be a very painful process. But we know he's very religious, and he loves old-time church hymns. So the music therapist is brought in singing Amazing Grace and some of his other hymns at a tempo that's going to keep him relaxed and the pain under control. All of these things use music to affect a non-musical behavior or task. And so therefore, all these different diagnoses can be helped with the use of music. It is not diagnosis specific, it is conditional specific. So why isn't this better known at this point? Particularly music for pain management. We've been in the midst of the pandemic, but we've also been in the midst of the opioid epidemic for many, many years. And music for pain management could really help alleviate this. Music actually creates chemical change in the brain upon hearing it. There was fascinating research coming out of McGill University in 2015, where they were able to track what was going on in the brain when someone was listening to their very favorite piece of music. And they found that on anticipation of that really cool part of the music coming, the brain actually issued a small amount of dopamine. And then on the reward, when that moment happened, that moment that gives you the goosebumps happened, Another shot of dopamine was issued, along with a small dose of natural opioid. This has tremendous implications for pain management. More research is needed, but it has tremendous implications. I met a woman a couple of years ago. She came up to me after a concert and said, "I need to tell you my story." And so we went out to lunch, and she told me she had been in a car accident 30 years prior to that, had been put on significant amount of pain meds at the time, took a couple of falls, more pain meds, more falls, more pain meds, to the point where her body became addicted. She had to drop out of society. She wasn't able to work anymore, and really was just on a huge pain threshold every day. But she found out that a musician who she adored in high school was coming to the area to do a concert. The musician was Melissa Manchester, and she was determined to go to the concert. She did. As she was sitting in the concert, she was close enough to the stage where the vibrations from the music were actually able to come right through her body, and she realized at the time that her pain threshold had significantly lowered at the time. She was very excited, went home and called her doctor, got permission, loaded her iPad up with a playlist of all Melissa Manchester's music, and 24/7 for the next 2 months, she listened to the music of Melissa Manchester. And at the end of that 2-month time period, she was off of her pain meds, every single one of them. This is very, very powerful information. The subject of pain management and music is very personal to me also. I lost a former much-loved student a couple of years ago to an opioid overdose, and he left behind a devastated circle of friends and family here in the area. It was all so unnecessary because the drugs that he was able to buy on the street had filtered down from prescriptions that were legitimate prescriptions that people just kept refilling but not using. If we could make the medical people aware of music for pain management, we could help alleviate this crisis of the opioid epidemic, because that many prescriptions would then not be written. So again, why is this not already in the mainstream, this knowledge? It's tremendous knowledge. But I've been working on advocacy efforts for several years now, and I whittled it down to basically 4 big roadblocks that come. And the first is there are a lot of misconceptions about music therapy. Old ideas, gee, music therapy is sit and play the guitar and someone will feel better, back from the 70s when it was a social science. It is a neuroscience. It is very specifically goal-oriented work based on research, based on science, and we need to move forward with that. The second item is the fact that we have an enormous amount of great science out there, but we have a system in education where the researchers are basically having to publish to maintain their tenure-track positions, but there's no responsibility to then disseminate the information down where it can do so much good to the consumer. So then we would need an advocacy group to do that, but the music therapists are so busy with their clinical and studio work that there's really not an advocacy group for music therapy at this point. There's only about 8,000 music therapists right now, so it's a relatively small group. And the fourth thing is what I call the silo effect. Individual groups tend to remain with their own groups. Doctors work with doctors, musicians work with musicians, therapists work with therapists. And we all need to sit around the same table to be able to work together to be able to do this. So, some ideas for how this can succeed, getting the information down where it needs to get. We had a very successful model created here in Chattanooga for a performing arts series starting several years ago, advocating directly to the audience for the benefits of music and therapy. And I thought, well, I wonder if we could make this go national. And so I talked to my good friends at the Erie Philharmonic up in Pennsylvania, and they were thrilled to agree to participate in a set of video educational units that will be free of charge on their website, that other organizations can use as a model, or other organizations can just use flat out to help educate their audience about the benefits of music and therapy. We need more centers of excellence. This is where the educational, university systems, medical systems, community can all get together, and we can sit around that same table and do what we need to do to find out what the solutions are to the problems. We're also in the age of social media, which is a marvelous platform for being able to get the word out. And if we can get some interesting, innovative ideas out there that can go viral, we'll immediately reach people on a worldwide level. A friend of mine and I were talking a month or so ago, and he said to me, well, what is really the first thing that we experience as human beings with music? And both of us immediately said, oh, it's the lullaby. And so why not create a national lullaby contest where we create and compose a brand new lullaby, but it's to raise awareness for the benefits of music and therapy. So to wrap up, the science is out there. It's out there in huge amounts. All we need to do is be able to bring it down to the consumer, the doctor, the patient, the therapist, so that they are aware of it. And if we can do that and move music into medicine, I remain firmly convinced that music could revolutionize healthcare if we'd only go in that direction. Thank you very much.